What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be looking at the results from RC Atlanta. We're going to take a look at the top 8, who played what, and how everything shook out, some of our predictions and everything as I can try to remember them as best as I can. We're going to be going over all of that in this video, but of course, if you have not already done so, if you would consider subscribing to the channel, ring the notification bell, when do videos like this and others get posted, as well as going into the links down below. I will link MTG Melee to give you guys the list so you can look at it yourself, and of course my Discord server is down there as well. Feel free to follow the link and join there as well. So, Regional Championship Atlanta, the format Pioneer, and our top 8 is pretty interesting. We kind of went over a lot of these decks. Well, we went over all these decks in the kind of like pre-game show, if you will, or pre-tournament show. And Izzet Phoenix, Rakdos midrange, we're not surprised to see it in there. Amelia combo putting 2 copies in the top 8. Not only that, but both players getting the play in the elimination rounds, and a very good possibility of even getting the play as well in future matches, unless they play against, obviously this one against the other combo player, Rakdos midrange, Izzet Phoenix. We have Azorius Control making it the 5th seed and the 8th seed. Of course, another Rakdos midrange and Izzet Phoenix deck. So we had, 2 of each deck. We had 2 control players, we had 2 midrange players, 2 Phoenix players, and 2 Amelia combo players in the top 8. Not how I thought that would have shaken out, but, looking at the results and everything, it's basically the decks that we thought were going to perform well, the 3 top decks in Phoenix, Rakdos, and Amelia. And of course, I think Izzet Control being kind of in a good position where, and maybe even going forward, it's going to be in a pretty good position, because, you definitely don't go 11-2-1 and then 11-1-2 on accident. Especially our person here, Daniel Weiser, who ended up actually winning the event with Azorius Control. And as you'll notice when we go into looking at the deck, they were playing with Yorion. Yorion the Sky Nomad, banned in Modern, legal in Pioneer, and just super crazy. But, I'm going to throw it over to Moto here when we get done here, kind of going over some of the other deck lists and kind of wrap everything up. But the 2 decks that we will look at are this Yorion Azorius Control deck, and of course Izzet Phoenix, the 2 players that played in the finals. Ultimately, Azorius Control winning the whole thing. I don't know if I said it before, but I'm going to try to throw up a graphic here to show the top 8 and how it exactly played out. Of course, we can kind of do it easy from here, where we have Amelia combo versus Azorius Control, then we had Amelia combo versus Izzet Phoenix, Rakdos v Rakdos, and then Izzet Phoenix versus Azorius Control. In the 1 versus 8 matchup, or excuse me, in the Izzet Phoenix, where we have Robert King playing against the, it says Rakdos midrange, but it says Magus was on Azorius Control, so I'm assuming that they were just trolling. No, okay, it says that this is Blue Eye Control. They messed up the graphic here. So we have 1 versus 8, Izzet Phoenix versus Azorius Control. Izzet Phoenix does come away with that win. We have Amelia combo here in Robert Wagner versus Daniel Weiser. Of course, we know that Daniel Weiser ends up winning the event. Then we have Adam Brace versus a Mark Stanton, and Izzet Phoenix ends up taking on that one. And then we have Rakdos midrange versus Rakdos midrange in the 2 and 7 spot. And crazy Paul Green, Rakdos midrange, wins that one as well. Going to the semifinals, we have King versus Weiser on Azorius Control. Oh, and to note too, Robert King is 12-0-3 on the weekend, running extremely hot, but ends up losing to Azorius Control, in the semifinals. Going over to Stanton versus Green, we have Rakdos midrange versus Izzet Phoenix. Izzet Phoenix coming away with a win there. And then in the semifinals, Azorius Control 2-0ing Izzet Phoenix. Putting Daniel Weiser at, 14-1-2 on the course of the weekend, which is insanely hot running, especially with a deck like Azorius Control, where we know that playing this deck does take an immense amount of skill. It takes a lot of preparation and a lot of knowledge of the format, and especially in a format that has been, reduced to essentially like a few decks, in the way that we know the metagame was going to kind of be spread out. People were going to be trying a bunch of different things. We've settled on a few decks that work in Phoenix, Rakdos midrange, Amelia combo. So I think with a game plan of being able to kind of zero in on those decks, and you kind of have some of the other range of decks kind of covered by covering those three, it put Azorius Control in a pretty good position to not only take down the event and perform very well in the early stages of the Pioneer format, but I think as the format kind of gets more refined, I think you'll see a lot of stronger players on Azorius Control, just because it does do a lot of work against the new top 3 decks in the format. So that's how our top 8 played out. Looking at some of the other deck lists, we'll kind of go through 9 through 16. We have William Thompson on Azorius Yorion just outside the top 8. Looking at Isaac Bullwinkle, who played Izzet Phoenix, and we have another Rakdos midrange deck, and Mason Jones. Philip Silberman playing Azorius Control. Daniel Hall playing Mono Black Aggro, where this deck was a big player when Smuggler's Copter was legal. Once before, of course, now being unbanned, I look to see this deck kind of get like a pass back into the format, and it looks like it found a way here. I would look forward to maybe trying this deck out, because I absolutely loved Mono Black Aggro back in the day. You have James Gates, the lone, maybe not the lone Lotus Field player, but a pretty well set up, I guess, Lotus Field player. Going on, you have Ezra Lee playing Amelia combo, and Patrick Tilson playing Rakdos midrange. Some more Amelia combo, Azorius Control, a Jund Transmogrify deck, which I believe this one just goes and gets your Atraxa and things like that, and you end up just getting to control the game and do crazy stuff with it. Pretty sweet there. Azorius Control, Enigmatic Fires, Izzet Phoenix, Amelia combo, and Azorius Control. So overall, we were kind of right. Amelia combo, did pretty well. I mean, there's at least I'd say 3 to 5 decks in the top 25, top 24 really, of the event. So getting, 4 copies in 24, that ends up being 1 in every 6 decks was Amelia, which is pretty cool. We expected Izzet Phoenix and Rakdos midrange to kind of put up the numbers as well, but Amelia combo kind of showed out here and proved that it could be the combo deck of the future going forward. While probably not the best version of it is totally refined, as in Izzet Phoenix and Rakdos midrange, probably is at the point where it's probably the most tuned or most optimal. It's just going to be making a few card decisions here and there. So Amelia combo, again, putting 2 copies in the top 8 along with some of the other best decks in the format, I think kind of served some justice, as in that it definitely has some legs, and whether it belongs in the format or not, whether it's too powerful, who knows. But the fact that it put up a result like this is awesome for it, and especially putting 2 players in the top 8, in the top half of the top 8, to put them on the play. Unfortunate for them that they lost, but it is what it is. Not nearly as much like Lotus Field, or even diversity, I guess, when it comes to it. So we have the Azorius Control decks that are playing Yorion. You have a Mono Black player, you have a Bant Lotus player, you have a Jund Transmogrify and Enigmatic Fires. You have these other decks. So in the top 25, you have 7 or 8 unique decks, but then of those 7 or 8 unique decks, 3 to 4 of them are just a lone single copy at the top. Now, it could just be in the fact of Amelia, where Amelia is very powerful. I mean, it has an infinite combo in the deck where you can just win the game on turn 3. And then, of course, you have Mono Black, who plays an aggro deck. You have the Lotus Field deck that is a combo deck, but, can definitely get aggroed out pretty easily, if it's not careful, or, it's not set up to win, has some mulligan a lot. There's a lot that can happen there. You have Jund Transmogrify, and you have Enigmatic Fires, these kind of over the top, mid-range decks where you can just win early with Atraxas, or you can kind of just play a grindier game than most other decks. Playing the Fires deck, and of course, these decks in particular have also been around for a while, with the exception of Mono Black Aggro. So they're pretty close to as tuned as what we're going to see, and of course there's a chance to evolve, with any of these decks, truly, with how the results shook out for this. But I think it's going to be a lot easier for Amelia combo to go from there because it's already established itself as a very good deck to be playing right now. And I think going forward, as it makes improvements, it's going to improve on an already, very high win rate, where some of these other decks are just kind of had to start like towards like the bottom or middle of the pack and potentially move their way up into like the lower tier of being playable, where I think Amelia combo is already in that tier of like this is a tier 1 deck in the format. So with all that out of the way, pretty happy with like what I predicted to happen, and maybe it was pretty obvious as to what was going to happen. Amelia combo didn't end up actually winning the tournament, but aside from that, knew we'd put copies in the top 8, copies in the top 24, top 16, what have you. And of course, Izzet Phoenix and Rakdos midrange doing what those decks do. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the deck list and the physical decks of the list that Daniel Weiser and Mark Stanton played in the finals of their match. So let's go ahead, take a look at the deck over at Moto and see what we got going on. So here we have Izzet Phoenix, pretty standard for the most part. You have your playset of Consider, your playset of Ops, a sleight of hands, so on a singleton copy of Spell Pierce, 4 Fiery Impulses, 4 Lightning Axes, Spikefield Hazard being reintroduced into the main deck. There's a few decks that were running around beforehand that were not playing Spikefield Hazard, and I'm sure this is kind of in response to the Amelia deck getting to play the 1-drop that will, can come back potentially. So this just kind of giving it an out to just kind of get rid of that real quick. You have 4 Ledger Shredder, you have a Picklock Prankster, you have a Jawari Disruption, which I'm sure has gotten enough people, and the fact that the tournament itself was open deckless for kind of an important side bit, I guess. You had to like respect the Jawari Disruption, just like you had to respect like the Spikefield Hazards and that. Picklock Prankster, of course, free the Fae, getting to mill 4 cards, instant sorcery fairy into your hand, which means that you could pick up additional Picklock Pranksters, and in the hopes of like milling Phoenixes, of course. You had a Galvanic Iteration, you have an Izzet Charm, you have a Temporal Trespass in the main, and 4 Treasure Cruise. I mean, pretty stock, all things considered. You have Fables in the sideboard, you have Crackling Drake, Unlicensed Hearse, Brotherhood's End, which, of course, this deck playing Brotherhood's End over something like Anger of the Gods for the fact that you do not want to anger the gods with your own Phoenix in play. This will just let you kill them, put them back in the graveyard, potentially cast some more spells, bring them back into play. All easy said and done. For the most part, it is a stock list. Izzet Charm and like Jawari Disruption is kind of new, and so is Spikefield Hazard. But pretty much what people have been playing, and I think some decisions made knowing that the event is open deck list as well. So good on them for kind of playing this deck, because I think a lot of these decks were going to suffer from, being the target of like other graveyard decks in the format, simply for the fact that Amelia combo kind of could interact from the graveyard side of things. So I figured people would probably have a decent amount of graveyard hate in for these guys as well, because it would just work out very well. And thankfully for our player here in, let me pull up the name, in Mark Stanton, that didn't happen, and ended up having a pretty good result. Of course, not the ideal way to finish, but making it to the finals of an event this big is huge. And of course, all the players in the top 8, and I believe down to top 16 or top 32, all qualify for the Pro Tour. So can't necessarily be mad at that. Next, we are going to go to the Azorius Control deck, which I think is probably the most interesting of the two, simply for the fact that it's been a while since we've seen a control deck. As you see, 80 cards in the main deck, giving you access to a 1 Yorion, the Sky Nomad, which blinks all your permanents and returns them to the battlefield. So you have copies of like Omen of the Sea, which are essentially, Preordains, but you can cast them at instant speed. Of course, get a little bit of a chance to, sacrifice to get some scry action going on. You have Temporary Lockdown, which gets rid of each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until it leaves. So, of course, you could put it in play, get rid of a bunch of things, Then, your opponent puts some more things into play. You get Yorion, play Yorion, bounce it, put it back into play at the beginning of your end step, gets everything all, takes it all away again. You have a rewind. You have Memory Deluge in the deck as well. Full playsets of Teferi Hero Dominaria and the Wandering Emperor. You have Shark Typhoon in there as well. March of the Otherworldly Light as the ways that you can kind of tap low and still get to deal with things that your opponent plays by pitching some white cards. Also, getting to exile a artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less is super good because you can just pay 1 white mana and then exile a white card. You can get rid of Amelias and things like that. That will potentially just end up winning the game. You have 3 Supreme Verdict as well to kind of clean up all that stuff. You have the new removal spell and Get Lost to destroy a creature, and then destroy a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker, and then its controller creates 2 map tokens. You have 3 Dovin's Veto. You have some Make Disappear as well as just essentially 2 mana counter spells that have some upside when you pair it with something like if it is in here. Do they play it with a Castle Ardenvale? You can sacrifice the 1/1 token to make your opponent have to pay 4 for a mana, or pay 4 for a spell. Also new to the deck, Restless Anchorage, which is a tapped creature land that you can pay for 3 mana to activate it, and it becomes a 2/3, and whenever it attacks, you create a map token. So you can kind of, potentially grow your land as well by getting to sack the map token, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It will not lose that +1/+1 counter, so it'll just stay on there forever, and you can just keep attacking with hopefully a progressively bigger creature. In the sideboard, a card that I've always had like a soft spot for in Dream Trawler. Flying Lifelink, 3/5 for 6, that whenever it draws a card, it gets +1/+0, and when it attacks, you draw a card, and it protects itself by discarding a card, giving it hexproof, and you have to tap it. You have 3 Rest in Peace. You have Hallowed Moonlight, which is pretty good against the Amelia deck in particular because they have Collected Company, Court of Calling, and the Convoke thing, Return to the Ranks. So you can just exile all their things with the Hallowed Moonlight, make life easy. Elspeth's Smite could definitely help you in like the players that are just trying to get a little too aggressive. You have Seed Shark that essentially is like a Shark Typhoon in a way, except it makes the tokens that will you have to pay mana to like flip them or whatever to make them creatures, but it is what it is. Like, you do what you can to make creatures. I believe too, I don't think that they're creatures as well, so like you can just wrath the board and then make the flip the token over, and then you have an actual board presence where your opponent doesn't, which is really neat. But yeah, that's blue-white control in a nutshell. And I mean, while it's not doing anything necessarily different from what blue-white decks were doing in terms of like the cards that they're playing, they're just playing more copies of those cards, and Yorion kind of gets to be free to reset some of these things, and then also just even be a win condition on its own. It doesn't even necessarily need to come in and flicker, say, a Wandering Emperor or a Hero of Dominaria or a Shark Typhoon, whatever. None of these things. It has the added bonus of like synergizing well with Omen of the Sea and even at times Temporary Lockdown. But all in all, like, it is a win condition that you always have access to, and you don't necessarily need to put one in your deck when all of your cards are going to more than likely be 2-for-1s. And then you don't need a win condition because, like I said, it's always there. You always have a Yorion with you at all times. And that is it for RC Atlanta. That is the wrap-up. Blue-white control getting the win over Izzet Phoenix, and of course, probably bigger than anything else, the players getting into the top 8, and I believe again the top 16, all going to the Pro Tour, which is kind of like the big thing and kind of why you go to the RC anyway. I mean, there is a big cash prize, and of course, automatic bids to Worlds, where these 2 players do get it, making the finals of the regional championship. So kudos to them. doing very well in the tournament, and of course, just absolutely putting on a show. The only thing disappointing about all this is that there was absolutely zero video coverage of the event going on. I could not find anybody who was live streaming it, whatnot, which is very unfortunate because this is a very big tournament, and I think a format that a lot of people could really get into if you just spread the awareness and just had it on for people to watch. So very unfortunate that we couldn't have that. But all in all, it seemed like a very successful event. Again, congratulations to all the players that participated. It's a pretty big challenge to even qualify for some of these events. I know that there's some events that, RCQs that are like super small, whatnot, but definitely, being right place, right time, finding a way to win the regional championship qualifier, making it to the regional championship, and then qualifying for the Pro Tour. Sometimes it just takes one event and you kind of get the ball rolling. So if you are not already queued for Denver, so on and so forth, definitely don't hang your head or anything like that. Just keep trying, keep going out there and playing, and who knows, maybe one day you'll end up in one of these videos. So that's gonna do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and comment down below what Pioneer deck you are either surprised didn't make it, or some of the other things that you were kind of excited to see from RC Atlanta. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell as well, so you know when videos get posted. And of course, in the links down below, you'll have a link to the deck list for RC Atlanta, and you will have the link to my Discord server as well. Feel free to join over there. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.